Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Voxcaster podcast. My name is Max, but you can find me on Instagram under Giant Paints Minis. And today we have a very special episode. We are doing our own Kim and her introduction episode. So, Kim, if you would like to just say your hellos.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Kim from Loonshrine Studios on Instagram, and I guess this episode is all about me.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Steve was unable to join us. He had a little bit of an emergency come up. So he did wish all of our listeners a hello and how are you guys? But today is Meet the Team for Kim. So today will be diving into Kim's background, how she started into the hobby, maybe some other things that, have happened in your past that maybe help you or can give you a different perspective on the hobby, just little things like that. So I'll start us right in. I know that through your powerlifting, myself being your coach, obviously I talked about Warhammer quite a bit, and I feel like that is where a lot of the influence of you wanting to come over to the Warhammer side began. But for most people that don't know, your first hobby was actually doing diamond painting. So I wanted you to open up maybe how you got into diamond painting and maybe how you transitioned from the diamond painting side of things into the Warhammer side of things.
Diamond painting kind of started out as an accident, believe it or not, or I guess maybe a directed accident, I should say. I was on Instagram just scrolling as everyone does, it stuck in that like doom scroll where you just keep going.
Of course,
And I
as we
saw,
all do.
yeah, I saw an ad for diamond painting. I was like, oh, that looks so cool. And then like just kept scrolling. And for those of the listeners who have TikTok, I'm so sorry for you. I am also one of them. So like went on TikTok and again like just kept on getting diamond painting videos
Mhm.
and decided, okay, this is a sign. I feel like the universe is pointing me towards that diamond painting stylist. So went to Michael's, and once again, for those people not in Canada, Michael's is a hobby store here that we go to,
Yeah.
and they had a bunch of diamond painting. Started off small ones, went bigger, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. It kind of sounds boring, but the main reason for me that I kind of like stuck it out and got further into it was it just honestly helped with anxiety. It just completely
Yeah.
shuts my brain off and I can just place one beat at a time and completely zone out. But that kind of led into uh I guess similar feelings in Warhammer.
Mhm.
Like you said, just hearing all of the stories and the lore and seeing your miniatures. And with encouragement from you, I kind of went into the hobby and like I was saying, similar with diamond painting, as I was painting the miniatures, it was almost like my brain just shut off and I
Mhm.
could finally stop thinking and just be calm.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people, including myself and, yourself, and I know Steve is will be mentioning this in his episode as well, that to a lot of people and to hopefully to a lot of listeners as well, that this is an escape. At the end of the day, this is a hobby and this is meant to be something fun and something that you enjoy. And hopefully this is an escape from some of the craziness that's happening all around us. So, I mean, shutting your brain off for even a couple minutes or, a lot of the times this is something I wanted to ask you in your comparison, because a lot of times when we get lost in painting, it could feel like maybe it's like 5 minutes, but it's actually been like 2 hours. Did you ever have you experienced that in both your diamond painting and your hobby experience, or did you experience it more in one or the other?
Definitely both. I
Mm.
don't think one more so than the other. I think they both have their moments. I think it just all depends on how zoned in I am at the moment. Like I'm somebody who also likes to play YouTube videos or like podcasts and stuff as I paint and as I diamond paint.
Yep.
So if it's a good video, then I may not be as distracted, so time could feel a little slow in that sense. But yeah, for both of them, it's really easy for time to literally fly by.
So did you wanna maybe open up a little bit more then into, your first, Warhammer experience then, and, like, what kinda got the gears going for you? And we've mentioned in previous episodes also that, you did fall for, Soulblight and Gloomside Gravelords, right away, um, sorry, something that some people may not know was your first miniature that I believe you actually ever painted was actually the Gobbo the Christmas one, if I'm not mistaken. And, did you maybe wanna, dive into that and how that experience went for you and maybe, things you liked or didn't like from that experience that you now looking back can kind of appreciate or depreciate?
Yeah, so that was, guess it feels now that feels forever ago. But yeah, it was just after Christmas and the yeah, Christmas special edition goblin. I was so nervous. I don't think I even knew how to pick it up. Like I didn't know how to build it, was dropping every single piece. I think it took me probably 3 hours to build it. And it's like this little tiny model. For people watching on YouTube, we'll put a picture up on screen, but it's tiny and it took me well over 2 hours to do. It was so nerve wracking. And that was my first experience actually with a slap chop. And again, no real experience with like holding a brush or even applying paint. So that whole thing was quite the learning experience. Looking back though, I think one thing I will say was I held myself back a lot just because of my fear of damaging the model or breaking the model. Now it's nothing to just pick it up and turn it and hold it upside down or rest it up against something. But back then, just being afraid to manipulate the model
Mhm.
definitely prevented me from getting an actual completed paint job on it, I think. And then I also noticed looking back, I was also a little afraid to put into place ideas that I had for a model. So I remember talking to you about an idea that I had where I wanted it to look like a dog or something had peed on the snowman on the
Oh,
model.
yes, 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 I remember this, yes.
Yeah, so, like, drilling or not drilling, like, punching a hole,
Yep.
in the snowman and then kind of using, like, green stuff or something to shape it a little and then put, like, yellow snow on it and dripping. I thought it'd be really funny, but I was too intimidated and too new at the time to actually put it in place and actually follow through with it. Now, though, I would just go head first and say, okay, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'll just chip it off or something or paint over it or whatever. So that's been the biggest learning experience, I think, for me. It's just learning, it's just paint. Nothing
Yeah.
is set. And if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. You can always change it.
No, and I love that you bring this up. I think this is something that a lot of new people in the hobby they go through, they experience where they almost get almost like performance anxiety in a way towards their model because they're like almost anxious or worried about how it's going to look or this or that. But yeah, at the end of the day, like it's just paint. You can just prime over it and start again, get another one, throw this one out. Nobody'll know. No one's gonna know. But one thing that I was curious to ask you about, because I feel like I have experienced this as well. I know Steve's gonna mention this a little bit in his episode as well, is because we come from an athletic background, you yourself are a multi-record holding Canadian powerlifter. So do you ever find that you get almost competitiveness in the hobby when it comes to playstyle and maybe even when it comes to painting as well?
Yeah, yeah. I definitely do. I try not to. It hits me at first, and then, like, once I take a second to be like, "No, that's actually just pure talent and skill." I'm like, "Okay, well, there's no reason to be upset." But I know there's times where I'll see people's pictures on Instagram or like I'll be in the middle of painting a imperial fist. And all of a sudden on Instagram there's an imperial fist painted by a demon level painter,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'll just continue on mine. I guess I'll."
Just cry in the background silently.
Yeah, like, I thought mine was good, but
Remember, like, and this is also a good point as well for beginners, is that, a lot of the times comparison is the biggest thief of joy. And a lot of the times too, you've gotten into the habit sometimes that, and I've called you out on this before, not publicly or anything, I am now, um, that sometimes, where we have painted similar things, like for example, we have been both working on our Saturnine boxes in the background, building up our Horus Heresy armies at the moment. And sometimes, will do your like Centurion, for example, and then I'll do my Centurion, and then 2 days later, I see you suddenly working on that Centurion again, and it's like, funny how he was done 5 days ago, and all of a sudden you're working on it after mine miraculously finishes the day before. So I just wanted to ask you a few questions about that, and if you could, maybe no, I'm not. I'm just joking. But I will say though that, even like small comparisons among friends can sometimes just be down to, one of you has more experience because you've just been doing it longer. That doesn't mean that necessarily one of you is better. And I think sometimes all of us just need to take a step back and appreciate our own artwork and what we do, and also appreciate a little bit of our output to input ratio. Like, how much time have you put into this hobby versus your level where you're at? And this is also something that when I was coaching you for your powerlifting meets, you used to do as well, where you used to compare your numbers to other people's numbers and say, well, look at what they're doing. And I used to tell you, it's like, okay, yeah, but we're 2 years in, we're following a program, we've structured your next couple months, and you're comparing yourself to somebody who's been doing this for 5, 6 years. Like, what do you think you're going to be in 5, 6 years? And when you kind of look at it like that for a second, you almost go like, oh yeah, yeah,
I am pretty good.
yeah, right?
Well, I also had the problem of comparing myself to, like, 300-pound powerlifting men who were deadlifting, like, 700 plus. That was probably a mistake from the beginning. That was probably never gonna get me anywhere.
Anyways, what we're trying to say there is comparison is truly the thief of joy. And honestly, sometimes just, appreciate where you are for your level. And I think a lot of us need to almost do that sometimes, and just to humble ourselves really. And so maybe then switching it back onto you, and this is a moment that, as somebody who's new in the hobby, this is something that I almost like to ask is, what was the moment that you felt confident to start posting your stuff online? Because for a lot of people that start out, it's a very almost nervous to be anxious about the reaction you're going to get about your art. So what was the moment that you kind of were like, okay, no, I'm going to post this online. I'm going to show it off. And
I think the moment for me was actually when my mindset changed.
Mhm.
When I was able to kind of separate those feelings of, I guess, jealousy and competitiveness and unworthiness aside, and kind of look at my models as I paint them and say, okay, am I happy with them? Am I happy with them just by looking at them? Yes. Am I happy with them without seeing like anyone else's models? Yes. Am I only unhappy with them when I see other people's models? And the answer was always yes. So for me, realizing that and being able to separate that
Mhm.
allowed me to be fully confident and happy with my own models and not really think about, or I guess care about what other people have to say about them just because I'm happy with them.
Right.
And then once I started posting, like my very first post, and I got a couple likes, I think I got like one or two comments. I was like, oh my gosh, everyone is so nice, so welcoming. It made it a lot easier to post going forward after that.
Yeah, and hopefully, a lot of new people into the hobby get that same, reaction, because I think, everybody's art is beautiful in its own way, and just because you can't see the beauty in something doesn't mean others won't. But in the same breath, I feel that when you find that once now that you're multiple posts in, you've shown off multiple models, multiple armies now, actually, do you feel your confidence now more when you approach a new project as well?
Yes, I there is definitely more confidence
Mhm,
when approaching new projects, especially when approaching new projects within an army that I already am doing. So obviously everyone knows Gloomspite is the best AOS army out there. So obviously I do them. But like for example, I had never painted Trogoths before.
mhm.
And then I got a box and again never painted anything even similar to Trogoths. And it may seem like not that scary of a model, but for somebody who's brand new, I think any new type of model, new texture, or new technique that you need to do is a little nerve wracking. But it turned out really good. It turned out amazing. Actually, they're one of my favorite models that I did. Well, but no, there's a lot more confidence going in
Mhm.
to projects, and just again knowing that it's just paint, and if a mistake happens, then well, I get to start again and have more fun painting.
Yeah, so, with you bringing up Gloom's fight as was inevitable, um,
And the crowd cheers.
your first entrance into, Age of Sigmar, because you did, initially when you had told me that, you did wanna, dive into Warhammer and, I kinda presented to you like, "Hey, there's, like, the sci-fi side of things, which is, like, in the future, or there's, like, this more fantasy side of things." You said like, "Hey, I wanna go more fantasy," and you originally fell for the Soulblight Gravelords. What was it about the Soulblight Gravelords that made you call s them that called to you, that made you be like, "This is my army."
Honestly, first it was the look of them. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
They just looked like a tough army, like they
Mhm.
could take a hit and they could give a hit. And then once I started reading a little bit more and going in depth with Soulblade, one of the things that I really liked and really drew me in was just the constant, I don't know the right word for it, like a regeneration or like
Oh, the
uh
recursion of the models?
yes, right. So how yeah, you can always kind of bring models back and you always kind of have a backup plan
Yeah.
or like a little plan in your back pocket. So that those two things drew me in. And then once I started painting them and saw how much fun it was to paint them, I just got even more deeper into them.
And then, so shortly after you were into Soulblight Gravelords, I am a personal believer, and for anybody listening, please just make your own decisions on this. But I'm a personal believer that if you're going to play any game mode, I'm a big supporter of kind of dipping your toe in where you can. So, for
Hmm.
example, if you're going to be playing 40K, I personally believe you should try to maybe aim for starting with one army in the Imperium. And then if you're going to go for a second army, maybe try something Chaos, maybe something Xenos, maybe something that's out of the Imperium just to give you a completely different outlook or a completely different setting, story, whichever it may be. In Age of Sigmar, it's actually pretty easy because they break it up into the four grand alliances for us. And I'm a big believer, and this is just something that I do, is I kind of dip my toe into every one of the grand alliances, especially Death, but mostly I have
That's like three
everyone.
toes deep.
Yeah, honestly. But I don't really do destruction, funny enough. We're working on it. So I had made the suggestion to you that, hey, maybe, did you want to maybe try a second army that can be a little different? You can have, so you're not just playing skeletons and vampires all the time. You can have something different so that you can always be, having multiple paint projects. So you're not just always painting 60 skeletons on the go. Then you can, have a little palette break or this and that.
Hmm.
And I had suggested, hey, would you like to look at maybe a different Grand Alliance altogether? And you said, yeah, sure, I would love to actually. And you almost instantly fell for Gloomspite. It was almost no competition. You basically saw, I forget which model it was. You saw one model and you were like, this is the guys. I don't know if you remember. Was it Rabble Rouza or the Kill Team or the War Cry? What are they called?
I think it
Gabapalooza? Was it Gabapalooza or something? You saw the models or something. And you were like, this is what I want. This whatever army this
I
is.
think it yeah, I think it actually was either Galvapalooza or Trug,
Mm.
because I was really, like, instantly drawn in to the Troggoths and the, like, Trug trolls, like, in general. I thought they were really cool, and then, yeah, once I started seeing how unique every single Gloomspite modeling kit was and m how fun little accessories they had on them, like little mushrooms and everything. I was like, "That is the coolest, most unique army in AOS that I have seen so far."
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I just started the whole love affair. I cannot walk into a hobby store without grabbing at least one Gloomspite box at this point.
So, and one thing that I love to talk about and make the comparison as, you know, you and I are both kind of speed painters, and Steve would happily be here to talk about how the heavy metal side of things is better. But as two speed painters, we're lucky enough that we can take charge of this episode and just say, hey, speed paints are the best thing that ever happened. When you switched from Soul Blight to Gloomspite, I believe I saw a big like awakening in your painting and in how you approach paints almost, because going again, and I've brought this up before and I will in future episodes, is the fact that going from painting metallics and a lot of bone to metal like you do on Soulblight, you now had to switch over to painting a lot of cloth, a lot of fabrics, a lot of organic matter like
Mhm.
rocks, skins, scales, stuff like that. And your love for speed paints kind of changed. If I personally saw something, was there a certain moment or a certain model for you that you did in Gloomspite that you were like, the first time that you were like, wow, like this is like what I've always wanted Gloomspite and speed paints to go together to be?
Funnily enough, probably the source of my Instagram handle, the Loonshrine, it was actually a little farther into my painting journey with Gloomspite.
Yep.
I think it was probably my 10th model or so that I painted, but it was one of the first that I had actually gotten. I just was putting it off because it was such a task to start, but I had a vision in mind, and it may not be everyone's cup of tea, uh, but I had this vision of a glowing loon shrine, like with caves, fluorescent, a ton of mushrooms and greenery and everything. So I knew it was going to be a lot, but once I started even dry brushing it, the texture of the
Hmm.
loom shrine is
Yeah.
made for dry brushing.
Yeah.
It's perfect for it. So all you need is probably a size 4,
Yeah, I
or I
was gonna
guess an
say
extra large.
I'm pretty sure you did the majority of the big stuff with a 4, right? I was gonna say I think you use a size 4 for that.
Yeah, a size 4, um, acrylic, and then for dry brush, just like the biggest dry brush that we could find. I think it was like an XXL or something, but it went really smooth. But it just felt like the the Loon Shrine model itself was just made for contrast paints. The way that the paint dried on it, like every shade that I put on was exactly what I expected it to be and wanted it to be. There was no, oh, the bottle says one thing and the paint is 10 shades different, but it dries 5 shades different than that on the model. It was just a clean process from start to finish. And then again, like putting on all of the greenery, like the tufts and everything afterwards, it just felt like I was connected to that model
Mhm.
where everything just kind of flowed naturally. There was not a moment where I was just sitting there like thinking, how should I paint this part? How should I paint the cages hanging from the wooden beam up top? Or what should I add here? Everything just kind of flowed from my mind.
No, and it's great, like, to see somebody say that, like, "Hey, a project came together almost exactly how I wanted it to in my head." I think those are very big wins for people, and especially early on in the hobby, that can be something that once you do something like that, especially for something that The Loonshrine is not a small kit. For anybody, for any of our listeners that have never actually
He's
seen a
sick.
Loonshrine or held a Loonshrine, it is not a small beginner friendly kit. Not in the building or any of that aspect. It's the fact that there's just a lot of very hidden details that you don't really get to see until you work on the model because it has so many of these mushrooms coming out. You have to have very, very strict brush control actually to paint between the mushrooms to access some of these points. So personally, I don't think it's a very beginner or early on in the process friendly model, but you tackled it and you said, no, I really want to finish this. I have such a great vision for it. And you kind of like steamrolled through it. But I think when you completed that miniature, it was almost like it like kickstarted your drive to get all your other Gloomspite finished. Because
It's so true.
if I'm not mistaken, shortly after that, you did your Mangler Squig, your Loon Boss on Mangler Squigs,
Yeah.
and to which I think personally up to date is my favorite model of your Gloomspite that you've done. And I know that you're still adding some details to it. Like you said, little snippet on what Kim's working on here in the background. You did say you wanted to add a little bit of drool or something coming out of the mouth with live sorry with
The
resin
UV
with clear
resin.
UV resin. Sorry, that's it.
Yeah, so I've never tried the resin before, but one of my favorite things, Max knows this, I go nuts with accessories. Give me an accessory I can put on a model and I will buy it. So one of those things though that I really want to start adding is the UV resin. I think it is perfect for the mangler squid specifically with the
Yep.
tongue hanging out and it looking crazy. So I want to try that. And this is another insider scoop, I suppose. I'm painting Radikar at the moment.
Mhm.
I think it would be really cool, a Radikar the Beast, where his chalice is, where he's in his hand where he's dripping blood into the chalice, to add more UV resin around that and really show it like overflowing, kind of add UV resin with red paint in it, like other places. I just want to start using the UV everywhere. I just think it's such a fun feature, and I haven't even used it yet.
It honestly, it is one of those things that like once you kind of like start using it and start experimenting with different ways to play around with it, I do feel like it really becomes like you have to like fight the urge to do it sometimes.
Stop the too muchness.
Yeah, because especially when you get armies that is like it's very easy. Like for example, you said like with your Gloomspite. So, like when you're doing things like you said you want to do like, like fluorescent rivers and like little things like that. So which is great with UV stuff. And then you have Soulblight, which is easy to do a lot of take a little bit of UV resin, a little bit of like the one or two blood drops, mix it up, and then you UV harden it and it's good to go. But there's other armies I feel like if you're gonna do something like Skaven, if you're gonna do something like Magickin, maybe stuff like Sons of Bahamut, because they have a lot of accessories that can have like bodies and like all this other stuff. Or like if you're gonna do like Bundo the Whale Biter, that can be a very cool thing if like
Yeah.
water dripping off him or something. So I feel like little kits and little accessories like this on the side open up an artistic freedom on a whole other level with people. And it's so great to see people that are newer to the hobby not be shying away from these products, because a lot of these products, they weren't around when I started. Honestly, they've only been around for the last couple of years, and they just weren't really an option. You kind of just didn't have that. And now it's like slowly trickling in more and more, which I love to see personally, because I feel like, I want to see cooler, awesome ideas. Like I never thought of, hey, putting UV resin on the mouth of the mangler squid that the tongue is already coming out. So it looks like actual drool coming out his mouth. I think that's brilliant. That's such a cool idea. I'm so excited to see you do that.
Thank you. I'll have to do it soon to update everybody. It's been on my list now for about 2 months, so I think it's about time I cross it off.
Only 2 months.
Only 2 or 3 months.
Another thing that I wanted to open up with you, and this is going to, I feel, maybe be a little bit more biased from our end. You also got into the gaming side of things, but
Mhm.
you and I have been doing a metric ton of Spearhead games. For anybody that plays Spearhead, shoot us a message. Let us know how your games are going. Let us know your thoughts, please. We have tons of spearhead boxes. We have almost all of them, shy a few of the destruction ones, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, we just got a new one yesterday for the listeners. We got the Sons of Bahamut. Well,
Yeah,
not the Spearhead, I should say. Sorry.
no, sorry. We almost grabbed the spearhead, which we probably will within a
Sure.
week or so because that's how things go here. But we got the King Broad box. And Kim, if you want to open up on your idea that you're doing with that.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. Since learning about them, I've been interested in going into their spearhead, but before I fully commit, we got the box of
The King Broad box, but it can like be built as all the variations of the giants.
right, sorry. Right, we got the King Broad box because my idea was to use it for my armies of renown
Hmm.
in AOS, and luckily enough, you can bring it for almost every single army. So I'm going to probably add it to my Gloomspite first, and then something that Max actually brought up that was also a really good idea was getting more of the boxes and having more armies of renown, specifically like the King Broad box, but each giant is a part of a different armies. If this makes if anyone is still following along.
Yeah, so basically it's like we wanted my idea was like, cuz Kim said, "Hey, I want to buy the Sons of Bahamut giant like the Mega Gargant box, and in that box I want to kit bash my own thing that I can play alongside my Gloomspite. I want to add like little mushrooms to it and cool stuff like that." I said, "Hey, why don't you make, since you've always wanted to do a Sons of Bahamut army anyways, why don't you just get a bunch of little different Sons of Bahamut Mega Gargants, and you have like one kit bash for all your armies. So you have one that's kind of like for your Soul Blight Grave Lords. You can kind of add like some of the like cool armor or something to it. I don't know. It'd be kind of cool to see. And then, have one for your Gloomspite. So maybe have like some of the troll pieces on him. Maybe have like a couple squigs running up him or something. I don't know. Like there's so much you could do. And this was just an idea I gave to you, and then you were like, "Yeah, I'm doing it." And so it's like, cool.
Yeah, it's like, "Thank you for that idea. It is now my idea."
Well, and there's even like smaller things you could do. Like for example, you could say like, okay, I'm gonna have a mega gargant. I'm gonna have four, one to represent each of the grand alliances, and then I'm gonna have the smaller gargants each represent a certain army that I like in the grand alliance. So then the big ones kind of look like they always have a few little ones that kind of go with them.
Yeah, the whole crew, King Broad and his boys just rolling out for
Brought in the
battle.
boys. Brought in the boys.
Baby. No.
So not only do you know, dabble in Age of Sigmar and not into Spearhead, you do also have a little bit in the Horus Heresy side of things. So I just wanted you to open up about that. How has your Horus Heresy experience been so far? How do you feel it's been different painting Space Marines versus organics, non-Space Marine miniatures? Because a lot of people do start with Space Marines and you didn't.
Yeah,
Do you
opposite.
feel like it was a benefit that you didn't start with Space Marines first, or do you feel like, you can kind of see why Space Marines are the foundation?
So I will say it's a bit of both. I
Mhm.
can see the benefit of starting with Space Marines, but then I can also see the benefits that I got from starting with AOS.
Right.
So starting with Space Marines, I can see it being easier in a sense because you have a color scheme and you're doing every single model pretty much with that color scheme, give or take a couple colors. So you kind of can paint without I don't want to say without thinking because you do have to think, but you're not looking at your model thinking like, what color should I paint this bush? What color should I paint this like random satchel or whatever? Like it's like, okay, all your satchels are brown. All of your grenades are this color. All of your space marine armor is yellow. Imperial Fist, yellow, if you will. not saying anything, but yeah, so I can see the benefit in that,
Mm.
but I can also see the benefit with starting with something like AOS, and it's basically just the flip side of what I just said, in that you are kind of left to make your model more personal. Like I don't want anyone to feel like I'm
I think
talking.
I think what you're trying to say is that when you paint Space Marines all the way up from HQ, and especially if you're looking at Space Marines, like there's a uniform color. Blood Angels, it doesn't
Right,
matter if you're an HQ choice, it doesn't matter if you're a troops choice, it doesn't matter if you're an elite choice, it doesn't matter if you're a heavy choice, you're red.
right.
But when it comes to things like Gloomspite, well, with Gloomspite, guess what? Your heavy guys are your trolls. In the trolls itself, you have multiple different trolls with different backgrounds that all have a different color that then you have to try to coincide and make work with like the Moon Clan, and then you have to make all of that work with the Squigs. And do you do them all the same color? Do you do them all different color? How do you make the colors work together? Are you doing the same, if you're going to plan to do them as having the same bases and the same terrain, then how do you make all those colors work in unison with what your base color is
Exactly.
going to be? So I think that's kind of what you're getting at. And I think you mentioned this previously, and maybe it was, or maybe in private or on the us, but I think you've mentioned before that one thing that you liked about the Space Marines was that, once you kind of like you find the uniform outlook that you're trying to go for, it's very easy to just follow it through and just make it happen all the way from start to finish of an entire project. One thing that, if I may be a little picky to show the unbiased a little here. On the Age of Sigmar side of things, one of the things that we get, I guess criticized for is that sometimes the lore side of it is not really up to par, or in comparison to other game systems. Have you found yourself wanting or holding you back on the Age of Sigmar side from the lack of lore, or do you find that because you enjoy the models and how the rules work, that you're more inclined to that side of things, that you're willing to take a loss in the lore?
Yes, 100%. 100%. I because of the model designs and because of just how much fun it is to paint, I am okay with less lore. And I do think, again, it kind of, I guess, comes down to how you look at it in perspective. Sometimes less can be a benefit when you're creating armies and painting, because it does leave space for you to kind of fill in those gaps and create the lore that you want for them. And then that can lead to, unique, crazy ideas for your painting and design of the model itself.
No, and sometimes I agree too. Sometimes I feel like, where sometimes there's some criticism on the lore, I feel like, yeah, but then you're more open to have a more open discussion about what you think it is, or how you think it could happen, or other creative outlets can happen, if I could say it that way.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it is sad at times, obviously. Like obviously it would help having the same level of commitment, or same level of lore, same level of care through each game.
Right.
But especially with AOS, I do think it would be really cool to have Warhammer Plus shows on it that do show kind of more lore and more background. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, because right now, I believe there's just the Black Talon show, which we really liked, and then there was that one where they did like the shorts, but it was like one episode was 40K, one was not, one was AOS, one was something else. But then there is Sigmar's Toll, which I know is on right now. I don't think we've checked that out yet, so maybe we'll have to
No,
do
not yet.
a watch Sigmar's Toll and recap after that episode
Yeah,
or
we should.
something.
We'll come back in like 5 hours.
Okay, so then, have you also maybe found that, as somebody newer to the hobby, that sometimes having a little bit of lore in the Horus Heresy has almost guided you along the path of how to construct an army, how this army would look on the tabletop, or how they would do lore. Have you found that, maybe in the heresy side of things where you do have more of the lore and more deep dive into it, that has almost helped you structure how you do things in the hobby?
Yeah, especially with Horus Heresy, I think the lore is more important. With AOS, you can kind of get away with it because once again, it is a little bit more personalized, I feel like. With Horus Heresy, though, the lore itself kind of gives, at least for me, as somebody who has no experience with lore whatsoever when it comes to Warhammer, it kind of gives me an idea of the characteristics of the army
Right.
and kind of how to frame them in my head and what to envision when I'm planning them out. Like for Night Lords, for example, they are ruthless, they torture people, they bring fear wherever they go. Like you're going to
Yeah.
be running for the hills. So knowing that, I'm obviously going to go into the models thinking I want to make them as scary looking as possible. Their paint scheme is blue, with obviously blood and red. What other things can I do to make them look as intimidating and as like grungy and dirty and like they're just like as ruthless as possible.
Right.
And then on the flip side with Imperials, thinking like, okay, well, they're lore, they're serious, they're loyal, they don't joke, they're here for the battle. So making sure that when I'm painting them, that they're clean lines and they're crisp and, they're not as rough looking as the Night Lords. So I think lore in Horus can do nothing but help. It's not the be all end all. Like I think you can also do a lot with some of the armies that are lacking in lore.
No, 100%. I agree with you there. And, I think that um, that's a great way to look at it too, is that, that in certain game systems, and I like how on the heresy side of things, because it is more of the nitty gritty in the rules, it almost feels like the nitty gritty of the lore matters a little more. Whereas in AOS, where the rules are kind of more flowy, and especially because we do more spearhead style play anyways. We are going to be doing a path to glory soon, by the way, for anybody
So
listening, and that's going to be
excited.
something that if people are interested to track with us or stuff like that, we're going to be doing a complete path to glory where we actually want to do an escalation style force through Age of Sigmar. Kim wants to do her Gloomspite, and I want to do my Flesh Eater Quartz. So we want to do a full escalation style, starting at just the spearheads, working out the points, kind of seeing if they're close, and then kind of building off there and having, 2, 3 battles of that points, going up couple hundred, 2, 3 battles of that, going up, and kind of just building a whole narrative lore for our own personal armies, because this is something that we've wanted to do for a long time. And now that, we have access to the models that we need and the rules, we're really excited to do this. But I did want to ask you, so if you could pick between Horus Heresy and Age of Sigmar, which universe would you live in? Which faction would you want to be? And where along the hierarchy would you want to be?
I don't think this is going to surprise anyone. I'm going to go not decay, shocker, not with the endless battles and endless wars. Instead, I would go AOS.
Okay.
In my mind, when
Would
you
you still
look
want to
at
go
Horus,
would you still want to go Gloomspite over like would you still want that over like being a vampire lord though?
I would.
Yeah?
I hate to say it, cover my soul blight's ears right now. The death rattle skeletons behind you, make sure they can't hear this. I would. I think Gloomspite would be so much fun. It would just be an endless party. People, like, it would just be chill. Like, I know people say this too much, but the vibes, they would be immaculate.
They would. They would. Like imagine just hanging out with Gobblepalooza all day long.
It, I feel like there's just a soundtrack following you wherever you go. And it's just like endless, like, party music.
So what Gloomspite would you want to be? If you could pick any of them, who would you be? You can't say a named character. Like you have to be a non-named character.
Gee, I would probably be a part of their Hoppas.
Like the squig hoppers, or would you want to be like the Boingrot bounders?
Squig hoppers.
Yeah,
Yeah, squig
just
hoppas.
party all the time, going crazy on on a hopper squig.
Yeah, just jumping around as much as my little heart pleases.
They should make a loon boss on hopper squig.
Yeah, I
Because
don't
they
think
have
they
a loon
do.
boss on the they have a loon boss with they have just a loon boss with like a pet squig, then they have a loon boss riding the colossal squig,
And a loom
then they have a
boss with
loon boss on Mangler,
right,
right?
and then they have the loom boss that just has the moon,
Yeah, the one that came in the spearhead on the mushrooms. They don't have
yeah,
one for hoppers. It'd be cool if they had one just for hoppers and he like gave Boingrots and squig hoppers a buff.
yeah, that would be on, like, a really, like, a big hoppa.
If any Games Workshop are listening to this,
TM, TM.
there's your next edition character only release for the Gloomspite that you can do.
But all profits go to us, to the Voxcaster.
Yeah, yeah. We'll email you guys or something, but probably not. So, Kim, if you have anything else you would like our listeners to hear about or know about on your front, anything you're working on or anything like that, I know you've already mentioned that you're working on your Gargant in the background. I'm sure you'll be posting lots of pictures of that coming up soon and a lot more of your Gloomspite. As you mentioned, you do want to share more of your Gloomspite and Soulblight that you're working on as well. Is there anything else you would like the listeners to know or hear about you and your journey?
No, so there's gonna be a lot more Gloomspite coming. Getting back onto the painting saddle and knocking them out. It's been really good getting back to it. I look forward to starting at the Loonshrine Studios Book Club officially with all the listeners on this upcoming Wednesday. It's going to be the first official one, like
Yep.
I said. So we're going to be going over the first two chapters and kind of talking about what we think of the characters so far, what we're most excited about, and what we're most scared about because we all know people are about to die. And they may be our favorites.
Well, no spoilers for anybody.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, so these are spoilers for myself.
Yeah, yeah, I know. But on that note, we do want to thank you, everybody, for all our listeners, and thank you for the love and support. If you wanted to follow along our journey, please see us on all our social medias over on Instagram under the Voxcaster podcast. You can find myself under Giant Paints Minis. You can find Kim under Loonshrine Studios, and our third guest, who unfortunately could not be here with us today, but he did wish all of you guys all the best under Heavy Metal Steve. On that note, thank you, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful day and hope you tune into the cosmos. Bye.